Up until the 1980s, the industry of pharmacy was dominated by males. Gender stereotypes caused women to stay away from jobs that required them to be away from home for long periods of the day. As a result, pharmacy was known as a man's world. When you asked for the pharmacist at a drugstore or hospital, it was expected that the pharmacist would be a man. In recent years, females have become a dominating force in pharmacy due to the fact that more and more pharmacies have become corporate, as well as the fact that women in the workforce are becoming of increased social acceptance.
So the main thesis of my project was really to kind of look into why there are so many females in the pharmacy workforce today as opposed to the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. And so when I went out to think about who I wanted to interview, I thought about how I really wanted to interview people from different age groups. And so the first age group that I kind of did was people who are about 5 years out of pharmacy school. And the first person that I interviewed for that part was Audrey Murphy. She's about 5 years out, as I said, and she graduated from Wayne State. And then the next kind of age category that I went for was about people in their 30s, who were about 10 years out of college, maybe a little bit more. And her name was Michelle DuRoss, and she also graduated from Wayne State. And both of those women had only ever worked in a hospital environment. And then the third interview subject that I did was Vicki McAllister, who had worked in various different kinds of pharmacy. She'd work in nuclear pharmacy, she worked in management, hospital pharmacy, and nursing homes. And so she had a lot to say about that. And she'd been 35 years in the workforce, and so she had a lot more in-depth things to say about maybe gender disparities and other things like that I asked her about.
As a female in the pharmacy workforce, what issues do you see in the workplace?
Pertaining to what?
Pertaining to mostly gender disparities.
Pharmacy doesn't have a lot of gender disparities. Pretty much you get paid the same amount that a male pharmacist would.
Do you ever feel treated differently?
Well, in the beginning, in the olden days, in the 80s, yes, you would be treated differently because people expected pharmacists to be men. And so they would look at you and they'd say, I want to speak to the pharmacist, and you'd have to tell them you were the pharmacist. They expected all pharmacists to be men. So there was some gender disparity there, respect basically, but as time went on, that dissipated.
Okay, do you as a recent graduate feel that, you graduated in the past 5 years, are there any gender disparities that you've ever felt in the pharmacy workforce?
What do you mean?
Have you ever, been treated differently as a woman in the pharmacy? Do you ever feel like a pharmacist expects you to be a man or someone that you work with?
No, I've never really felt personally discriminated or anything, but I have talked to older women that I work with, and they say it used to be a lot different.
Okay, so do you feel that you've ever been subject to any gender disparities in the pharmacy workforce?
No, not really. I mean, what kind of disparities are you talking about?
I think mostly how do you feel? Have you ever felt treated differently by any of your male counterparts?
No, not really. I've never really felt that way. I mean, maybe some of the older doctors, but you kind of just let it go. So yeah.
Okay, and then when you were exploring what career path you wanted to take, did you take into consideration a career that would also be balanced with a family life?
Yes. I wanted to have a job where I could work part-time but make a good wage. And people had asked me if I would go to medical school, and at that time there weren't very many part-time physician positions. And I said no, because I wanted to have a family and work part-time. And most physicians worked full-time, so that's why I chose pharmacy instead of being a physician.
It's a family and a career. How do you balance it?
Well, working in a hospital pharmacy is probably the easiest pharmacy position, I think, to balance with a family, and still offer me the rewards of being a little more intellectually stimulating. But you know, there's never a perfect job. You have to make contingencies for when you work afternoons so that your family is taken care of, because you don't want to leave your kids home alone.
Do you feel it properly accommodates you, that your bosses properly accommodate you for what you need?
They do the best they can. They do their schedules a month and a half in advance, which has its advantages. They pretty much give you the days off that you want. They pretty much give you the weekends you want off, but you still have to work every other weekend, and that's a lot when you have a family. But they do a good job of trying.
When deciding what career path to take, did you take into consideration like one that you could balance with a family life?
Yeah, even though I don't have any kids, I do hope to in the future, and I want a job that is kind of compatible with that lifestyle.
So a lot of the public research that I've studied has dealt with kind of like why women are flocking to pharmacy and why that might be. And one thing that I found was that a lot of female pharmacists kind of find that it's compatible with like a family lifestyle. So my question is for you, do you have any children?
Yeah, I have a daughter.
Okay, and do you feel that your job like properly accommodates you, or your bosses properly accommodate you for the needs of her? Like, do you ever feel like you have to miss out of anything because you're at work or anything like that?
No, actually, not really, because you basically get all the time you ask for off, unless it's like a special time or something like a holiday. But I think for the most part, I basically get every day that I need off of. Although there are many times that I ask to get time off that I don't get, so it's really nice that way.
Okay, thanks.
There were two really big correlations that I found in both the public research that I had and then in the interviews that I conducted. And those two correlations were leading up to the question, why are so many females in the workforce, pharmacy workforce today, as opposed to back in the 1960s and the 1970s and the 1980s. And one thing that I found really affected the fact that the female rate of pharmacists is going like that is because it's becoming a lot more socially acceptable for females to be in a work environment and to be seen as professionals, and medical professionals really in particular. But yeah, and so there was a lot more gender disparities in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and now that we're in the 2000s, it's becoming so much more acceptable for women to be perceived as professional women in the workforce. A lot of women are really flocking to that area because they seem more accepted. And then the second really big thing that I found was that women are flocking to pharmacy because it's a really hot area for women who want to have both a career and the family. They want it all. So that's really one reason why they're flocking, because you get the hours that you want, you get to basically write your own schedule, as a lot of them would say, and that was a really big determining factor as to what career to join. And so yeah, a lot of women said that, and those were like the really two big things that I would say were both in the public research and the interviews that I conducted.
I want you to know that it's our time, you and me bleed.